Associate Director of Advising in the Environmental and Ecological Engineering area. And so just want to thank you for those that have joined us tonight to learn more about Triple E. With me, I have Professor Larry Nyes, as well as a few of our current Triple E students. And so I'm going to start out with some slides, but I want you to be thinking about questions that you might have for me as advisor, as well as Professor Nyes, a faculty member and instructor. And we also have a couple of juniors and a couple of seniors with us. So before me your questions, I'm going to go ahead and hop into slides, but I will say, if you have questions as I go along, go ahead and submit those into the chat. Professor Nyes is going to be monitoring that. And some of the simpler questions, he might be quickly responsive to you. Others, he might reserve towards the end, because we're going to have a portion of time where we're going to kind of do a panel situation and let our students that are with us talk as well. So I'm first going to start out with just a little bit of explanation about what Triple E is. So hopefully now that you've been here at Purdue for probably a semester, I would imagine, at least, you're familiar with Triple E, but it does stand for Environmental and Ecological Engineering. And if you had a heavy interest in an environmental program and perhaps you looked at other peer institutions as you were considering coming to Purdue, you probably noticed that Triple E is not a common acronym used. And so just want to explain that our program is environmental and ecological engineering combined. And so you don't choose to focus on just the environmental aspect or maybe, do just the ecological major. It's an integrated program. And so it has a very heavy undertone of integration between those two topics. And so there's a lot of systems thinking that goes along with that. And the faculty were very intentional in creating our curriculum that having that ecological aspect kind of is throughout our curriculum. And I'll hop into, and actually I'm getting ahead of myself because I did want to start out with a poll. I have 3 questions to ask you. And so I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. Just want to get a sense of what you all might know or think about Triple E. And so I believe that has now been launched out to you. Just give you like a minute and a half to go through that. And these questions were not designed to be trick questions. So kind of go with your knee-jerk reaction, that first initial thought that you have. And I'm hoping to wrap up in about another 15 to 20 seconds. All right, we are close. So I'm going to go ahead and end. And then quickly to go through here, I'm going to share the results if I can. And so the first question, environmental and ecological engineers do what type of projects? And so stormwater drainage planning, air permitting and regulation compliance, sustainable product development, environmental impact assessments, green infrastructure design, or all of the above or none of the above. So the vast majority of you got the correct answer with all of the above. Number two, Triple E alumni have held the following which job titles and positions: environmental compliance rep at Disney Cruise Line, project engineer at Hormel Foods, senior project supervisor at Intersolar, data scientist at Mathematica, civil engineering corps officer at the US Navy, and then only A and C or all of the above. And the actual answer was all of the above. So I tricked some of you on that one. And then which of the following is false? Triple E's can work at any company that makes things. Triple E's mostly work at wastewater treatment plants. Triple E's protect human and environmental health. Triple E is the smallest engineering program at Purdue. Triple E's design sustainable systems and technologies. And the vast majority of you got the right answer, with B and D are actually false. Triple E's mostly work at wastewater treatment plants. That is false. They work many other places, and Triple E is not the smallest program. So now back to the presentation. That at least gives me a sense of kind of where you guys are coming from in your knowledge about Triple E and what you think about the program. So hopefully you're going to be learning a lot of new things here as we go along. So this slide talks about our Triple E curriculum options. We offer the BS degree. That's our primary focus, and the BS degree requires 128 credits. I think it's very easily achievable in a 4-year plan of study, and I'm hopeful that our upperclassmen that are with us would agree with me. I'll let them chime in on that when we do our Q&A. We also offer a combined degree program, which is similar to a 4+1. So you can combine the BS with a master's fairly easily in a 5-year plan of study. There is a requirement for that you have to have a 3.25 GPA by the close of your junior year, and that's when you apply as you enter into your senior year, so that you can strategically map several 500 level courses into your senior requirements that will double count towards the BS as well as the master's. And you get to double count those course credits, which is unusual. And that's what makes accomplishing the master's so easy in just 1/5 year. So definitely something to consider if you have getting a master's as a goal. We also do offer the Triple E minor, and it requires 17 to 19 credits, depending on the course sequence that you choose. And so if you have a real interest in environmental engineering, but you feel that you're probably going to end up focusing on a different program, our minor oftentimes complements really well with any of the other engineering disciplines. So it's something to consider. You'll notice that there's a URL or a pathway there on our website to kind of help you navigate to our plan of study. And one of the things that we really recommend for students, if you're really toiling with, do I want to do environmental engineering or do I want to do one of these other disciplines, we really recommend that you pull out all of the plans of study of the programs you're thinking about and do a side-by-side comparison to see where there's similarities and where there's differences. And so oftentimes that will kind of help you, kind of form those decisions as you're kind of finalizing. And then this slide talks a little bit about what we call our Triple E profile, certain aspects that are important to know about what Triple E is. As a program, we are ABET accredited in environmental engineering specifically. So we are the only degree granting program in the College of Engineering that has an environmental degree, ABET accredited, and environmental and ecological engineering will be on your diploma title. Our undergraduate program is ranked 12th amongst U.S. environmental engineering programs, and that's 2021 U.S. News and World Report data. Our enrollment last fall, we had 165 undergraduate students, so that's all of our sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And one special detail, we are well over 50% female in our program. None of the other disciplines here in the College of Engineering even come close. So something worth noting. And then I want to talk a little bit about what Triple E's do. Environmental and ecological engineers develop strategies to protect human and environmental health, and as well as design sustainable systems and technologies. So that's the emphasis of our undergraduate program. Common career pathways, these top two bullets are really within the domain of what we call classic environmental engineering, or very traditional focuses of environmental engineering that have a lot to do with water and watershed stewardship and pollution control and remediation type of initiatives. The bottom two bullets are more within the modern evolving focus of where environmental engineering is kind of going in the future. Has a lot to do with sustainability efforts, mostly pertaining to the built environment and manufacturing processes. And so if you think about, any company that creates a widget or builds something and manufactures something, their emissions, what they are doing in their processes, the negative waste stream that they output, those things are impacting the environment. So every company needs to have an environmental engineering sector or health and safety area. So that's kind of where environmental engineers come into that industrial sustainability piece. And then here's a little bit of a breakdown of where Triple E's work in terms of whether it's the public sector or the private sector. And so a niche, about a quarter, is within the public, and you see a breakdown there of, federal, state, and local. In terms of federal, if you think about the Department of Energy or the EPA, that's kind of what we're talking about there. State, likewise, every state normally has a regulatory board. So in Indiana, it's the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And at the local level, that might be a county office, a wastewater municipality, or maybe an engineering office at the local level. Then looking at the larger chunk of that pie is the private sector. And, so those are all environmental consulting firms or other types of manufacturing plants or industrial sites where environmental engineers might work. Then these next couple of slides actually kind of break down kind of main areas where I call them pathways, where environmental and ecological engineers go on to work. So recent alumni for Triple E, a good chunk have been going into consulting firms. And so this first column is clearly not a comprehensive list, but we kind of pulled together some of the bigger names, especially like here, maybe in the tri-state area in the Midwest. So hopefully a lot of these names resonate with you and, seem familiar to you. You've heard them. So that's kind of just for you to glance at there. In the next column is the government and service focused area. So kind of that public sector. So I mentioned the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. That's Indiana State Regulatory Board. Maybe the DNR, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, you got the U.S. Navy there, the EPA. There at the bottom, Peace Corps. We do have a number of our alumni who go into the Peace Corps, so that's more the service side. And so, oftentimes I have questions from prospective students that want to know if Triple E could be a pathway to maybe working with an NGO or, long-term hoping to work abroad. And so that kind of connects there at the Peace Corps. And then continuing that thought, then we've got the industrial and construction column that focuses more on the manufacturing and the industrial side, and then as well as the graduate programs. Many of you or some of you might be considering going on to a master's or a PhD. We would love to have you stay here at Purdue to do that. But Purdue Engineering can be a great launch pad to go on to other great high caliber institutions. And so these are some examples of where EEE students have graduated and then gone on for higher degrees elsewhere. So something to consider if you've got that as a goal. And then here we're looking at EEE jobs, more so looking at salaries that you could expect in the future. But I also want to point out with this top quote that there is growth in the environmental engineering area. And so, you know, this particular quote is based on 2014 up to 2024, that there's anticipated growth in the field at about 12%. And at that time, that was faster than the average growth for all occupations. And so there are job opportunities out there for EEE students. What we've kind of been seeing is normally there's about 2 jobs for every graduate. So, you know, definite opportunities. And then that bullet that you see there at the top is the average EEE Purdue starting salary for graduates that graduated out in May of 2019. That's the most recent data that we have from Purdue CCO office. So just over 63.5. And then looking at the next bullet, that's national average data for all practicing environmental engineers, whether they're beginners or whether they've been out in the field for 3, 4, 5 decades. And so that's more of an average of what you would anticipate to make, you know, hopefully a few years into your career across time. And so that's US data for beginning environmental engineers, mid-career folks, those getting ready to retire, kind of that average combo. And now I'm going to kind of change topics here and talk about undergraduate research and opportunities for students to maybe get involved in design teams and have more of that hands-on opportunity. So you're probably all familiar with EPICS and VIP at this point. That's engineering projects and community service and vertically integrated projects. There are environmental focused teams and opportunities to get involved there, as well as GEP, that's our global engineering programs. They offer global development teams. And so we have opportunities oftentimes that students can get involved through any of those 3, as well as SURF. Hopefully you're familiar with SURF, but if not, that's Purdue's Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship. You have to apply and be admitted, but it's a summer research opportunity. If you want to stay at Purdue, assist faculty with their research over the summer, it's kind of a full-time job type of deal. And so there's ways that you can kind of get experience, even if you stay here at Purdue over the summer and don't do an internship. And then definitely worth noting, EEE 498 is our undergraduate research course. We actually have a proposal process in place for that, that if you connect with a faculty person to help them with their research, you can submit a proposal and go through a review process to have a course created so that you can actually get course credit for the work that you're doing and count that towards degree. And then EEE 480 is actually our senior design capstone course. It's a year-long capstone, which is a little bit unique across the College of Engineering. So that's the entire senior year. Students work in small teams of about 3, maybe 4, but you actually work with a real true client on a real true environmental project. And so that is definitely hands-on, very design intensive, a great way to, gain full exposure to what you will be doing post-graduation. And two of our students with us tonight, Sadant and Kendall, are in senior design right now. So I'm going to have them talk about senior design once we get to our Q&A. And again, switch gears a little bit here, and I'm going to talk about study abroad. So within the College of Engineering here at Purdue, we encourage students, if you want to do study abroad, to hope to do that your junior year sometime. In EEE, we do have a couple of what I call pre-planned semester programs where we partner with University of Canterbury in New Zealand or the University of New South Wales in Australia. So those are kind of easy pipelines that if you don't really care where you go and you don't have a foreign language to rely on, those are easy pathways to get you abroad. But you don't have to go to those particular destinations if you don't want to. We've had EEEs who have studied in Brazil, Germany, Ireland, Singapore. So there's opportunities to go elsewhere. You just might have to do more of your own review of course selection, and you'll get plenty of assistance from me and Professor Nyes as you do that. We also have a Maymester program. If you're not familiar with Purdue's summer modules, that is a 4-week module that occurs mostly in the month of May. And so one of our faculty members, Professor Inez Hua, leads a group for a Maymester program, normally in odd summers. COVID has kind of put a hiatus to that for this year, but we're hopeful that she will be taking another team of students. Hopefully, maybe she'll go even years and pick it up in 2022 or maybe 23. Main emphasis though, when I talk with students about study abroad, is that we're small enough as a program, we can be very flexible and try to be accommodating to meet individual student needs. So if you come to EEE and you got a plan, we'll work with you. And again, there's a website there that if you want to go out, we've got a page dedicated to our study abroad information. So you can kind of go out and take a look at that. I believe this session is being taped. And so you'll be able to, if I'm flying through some things here, reference back. I will say with this poster, Serena McLaren is one of our EEE seniors who participates in GEAR. She created this poster, and I know it's very small, so maybe you can go back at your leisure and look at the taped video version of this presentation if you want to kind of dive into the details of this. But I think she did a very nice job of capturing her experiences when she went to University of Canterbury and kind of some of the travel that she got to do. She also took some courses. Her time got cut short with COVID happening last spring of 2020, but she got to do a lot in a short time frame, so that was great. And then I'm going to be wrapping things up here and briefly talk about student organizations. So in EEE, as well as all of the College of Engineering, we really encourage our students to get involved in activities outside of the classroom. So you want to find ways to complement the things that you're learning in classroom and hone your soft skills that you can put leadership and, become a great leader, a great communicator, and be able to put those things on your resume. And a great way to do that is to get involved in organizations. This top bullet is recognizing SEEE, or Society of Environmental and Ecological Engineers. That's the main student organization connected to our program. But I've also listed a few other student organizations that we have EEEs involved in. They're not immediately connected to EEE. They're kind of cross-disciplinary. So if you want to get involved in some student organizations that are environmental focused and that maybe are or aren't fully EEE students, there's ways for you to dive in and get involved become a leader, get to know other students that are passionate about the environment, and, you know, get involved in outreach and service. So I'd encourage you to do that. And then this is kind of just a recap of ways that you can get more information about Triple E. If you have lingering questions after tonight's session, definitely our website. I think we have a lot of great resources out there. The Triple E office, I will say, we are in Potter, room 364, but with COVID, the office is not manned all the times of the day through the week. So the best way to connect with us is probably eee@purdue.edu. Shoot us an email with any specific questions that don't get addressed tonight, and we'll be able to connect with you that way. And now I'm just going to briefly cover who's on our panel tonight. Myself as academic advisor, Professor Nyes, who he is faculty in civil engineering as well as Triple E. And then Kendall Cuddy, a Triple E senior, Ann Murray, who's a junior, Shelby Johnson, who is a junior, and Sadat Paul, who is a senior. So I'm going to stop. Well, maybe I'll leave this up, but if I could start, I see Ann on my screen. So Ann, could you introduce yourself?
Hi.
So why did you come to Triple E? And then we'll go on to Kendall.
Okay. So I went into Purdue knowing I wanted to be Triple E because it's just such a new and interdisciplinary field. I was looking at the kind of jobs that you can take, and really you can connect almost anything to the environment. And I just think it's so interesting how our course curriculum intersects with so many different engineering branches. Like I have mechanical engineering classes, civil engineering classes, agronomy classes, which is like soil science, and then forestry and natural resources classes. It's so different how you can set up your curriculum to really focus on your interests that I felt like was unique to Triple E. And we'll learn about job opportunities later. So that's who I am for now.
Thank you. Kendall.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kendall. I'm kind of a weird case. I didn't come to Purdue thinking I was going to do Triple E. I thought I was going to do Aero. But then when I got here, I discovered actually through like 131, the Triple E program. And I was always really passionate about the environment, but I didn't know a lot about environmental engineering. And when I like discovered the program and like all of the support and all of the different things you could do with Triple E, I totally switched gears and I ended up going into Triple E and been loving it ever since.
Sadat, how about you?
So I came into Purdue not knowing what I wanted to study, and I was actually in the exploratory program, and in that program, one of the programs I explored was environmental engineering, and then seeing all the various things that environmental engineers did got me interested in it, and I've always been pretty passionate about the environment. And summers before college, I'd worked on a rehabbing a lake near where I lived, and a lot of the people I had interacted with were environmental engineers. So that helped me decide that I wanted to be in Triple E.
Shelby.
So like Kendall, I came in not thinking I was going to do Triple E directly. I did know of the program, but it wasn't my first thought when I first came to Purdue. I thought I was going to do civil with an environmental focus. I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do environmental. Probably over winter break was when I kind of figured out that I wanted to do that. But the main draw for me of like choosing Triple E over civil was the flexibility of the course. The courses that you can choose, you really get to design your own coursework and what you want to take, whereas you don't get that flexibility in most of the other engineering disciplines. We just have like greater flexibility to do whatever you truly want to learn about that falls under Triple E and incorporate as much as you want. Of like, if you really want to focus on water, you can focus on water or do industrial sustainability. You have a lot of control over your coursework, which I really appreciated because I like environmental engineering and I still don't really know what I want to do, but it allows me to get a little bit of everything that I find interesting and still be able to graduate on time.
Professor Nyes, can you introduce yourself? And before I forget, do we have any questions that we need to address? But I'll let you kind of say who.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for visiting us. I'm Larry Nyes. I have a joint appointment in civil engineering and environmental and ecological engineering. I've been with Triple E since the very first day, and maybe even before that. And we do not have a single question in the chat, which means that there must be a pent-up demand of people waiting to unmute themselves and ask their questions. So I would encourage those of you who are here to please go ahead and do that.
I have a question. Are there any biology courses that are going to be necessary for this major?
Yes. For someone else to respond. So actually, the way, so there's basically 3 courses that you are required to take that are biology or ecology focused. The first one is Biology 112, and then Biology 286, which is like a full ecology focused 2-credit course. And then in the senior year, students take F&R 586, which is an urban ecology class. And that particular course was created for our Triple E program and actually is taught by one of our faculty, Professor Brady Hardiman. And that's kind of his niche area. And students, I'm wondering, it's a fall course. Sedan or Kendall, did either of you take that last fall?
I took it last fall. I wouldn't call it a biology course. I mean, technically it's like the advanced biology course, but it's not similar to like what you would think of as like a traditional biology course. It's really fun and it's very interesting what you learn in that, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot of projects too in the class, so it's not like tests, which can get stressful. So it's definitely not your traditional biology class.
So we do have a question in the chat about what would be advantages of being in Triple E over some other major. And let me just scroll up and make sure this was to everyone, so you can all see it, over chemical engineering, but this could apply to anything with a ecological environmental focus. And you know, I don't want, this might sound annoying because it'll sound like I'm dodging your question, but what really matters to us and is really important is that everybody finds the path that's the best for them. So it would be inappropriate for me to say, well, Triple E would be better for you. You have to decide for yourself. And, you know, you added the extra thing about in terms of internships, jobs, courses, anything really. And the fact is there are multiple pathways to get to almost any career. We always encourage any student at Purdue in engineering to look at the plans of study of the different degree programs and look at how much flexibility or lack of flexibility in the required courses and make a determination that's best for you. So you're not going to hear me say, yeah, you should come to Triple E, because that would be right for you, because I don't really know what's best for you. Our students are very successful in getting internships, and we have a professional who helps students get internships. Our students get jobs. I think we've placed every single student from the last graduating class now. Some of them take a little while for various reasons. Sometimes they're just really picky. Sometimes they just disappear off the face of the earth for 6 or 8 months. But our job placement rate in recent years is 100%. You're very welcome.
We could also mention the kinds of like internships, because that was also the second part of the question. I'm sure each of us could go through what kind of internships we've applied for, something like that. I just wanted to tell you like a little secret I do when I'm looking at internships. With environmental engineering, you can connect it to anything. And as an example, I randomly applied to a mechanical and physics engineering program at Fermilab Laboratory, and I got an interview offer because I told them that it's important to include the environment into these projects. And like, you can really go from anywhere, anything you're interested in, and you can include it with the environment. And I guess it works because if you can sell yourself, you can get an environmental job in basically any sector you're interested in. So really, internships seem kind of unlimited.
Sid, Kendall, Shelby, do you have internship experience that you're willing to share? Just to, tell a story.
Applying for jobs and internships. There are jobs in a lot of fields. A lot of oil and natural gas is definitely hiring, especially internationally. If that's a sector you're looking at, there's also a lot of tech companies are hiring environmental engineers. I applied to a couple tech companies where I live, and I have an interview with one of them, and they didn't have environmental positions on their website. I just emailed a recruiter and they responded. So there's that too.
Yeah, my sophomore year, I was like very set on getting an internship in any sector or anything I could. So I basically applied, like mass applied to 60 companies and pretty much any sector you can imagine, like a lot of consulting, a lot of manufacturing, a couple government ones. And I ended up with my current one, which is in auto manufacturing. So you can pretty much go anywhere that you want as long as you can interview and get in. But you'd be surprised at what kind of companies need environmental engineers, and how kind of interesting like pretty much any job you take is. I know like last summer, a lot of the stuff I was doing was not something I would have expected to do. And it's you learn a lot doing internships in Triple E, and you can pretty much get one in any sector you want if you try hard enough.
Hi.
Worth noting, oh, sorry, Shelby.
No, if you
Go
want to
ahead.
go. Okay. I haven't had an internship I have an internship this summer, but I haven't my past 2 summers. So don't freak out if you don't get something. I took coursework both summers to try and like catch up on a couple things, and then also take some interesting courses that I really wanted to take. So don't freak out. It will all be fine. But I have one that's in environmental consulting. So that's what I think a lot of environmental engineers get as like internships, something in the consulting world. And they figure out if they like it or not. And then they move on to something else if they don't like it, or continue on it if they do like it. So.
Shelby, I think that's a great point, is that oftentimes, students come back after summer and they've had a first internship, and sometimes they'll say, but I didn't like what I was doing. But that's actually a great experience it's provided you the opportunity to figure out what you didn't want. Environmental engineering is a fairly broad field. And so to close one door opens many others, and you can go, multiple other directions and pathways and find something else that's going to be a great fit for you. And then I was also going to mention, we have a staff member in Triple E, Ms. Meg Welton, who she actually wears a number of hats. She actually works with Professor Nyes in coordinating companies that sponsor our senior design projects. So she works in senior design, but she also works with students coordinating our co-op program and placement for that, as well as connecting our students or trying to facilitate connections for our students for full-time placement internships. So I'm just kind of thinking in terms of, she gets information out to students about career fairs, helps them prep, is willing to meet with you and go over your resume, and gives you kind of recommendations on how to refine kind of your elevator pitch, and covers a lot of bases. So that's something that I think is definitely a bonus or a benefit in our program for us.
So we have a question in the chat about research opportunities for undergraduates, and thank you very much for that question. And all of our faculty are willing to mentor undergraduate students in a research experience, and any student that wants to have a research experience, we will help you get one. I've never heard of a student that wanted to get a research experience that we weren't able to place. And usually it's really on the student to take the initiative, but we mentor and guide you in that process. And one thing that's interesting and perhaps somewhat unique about Triple E is we don't have a requirement that you do research with a Triple E faculty member. You can do research with almost anyone, because environment is related to almost anything, as our students have been telling you. And there are a lot of faculty at Purdue that have environmental interests, and we support you seeking out research experiences with any of them. And hopefully that answers your question.
Shelby, you commented that you were on the fence between civil environmental concentration and Triple E. And so I'm wondering, that is a common question that we get in a scenario or an environment like this from the audience, of what's the difference and how do I decide? Can you talk about that? And then maybe Professor Nyes might have a comment or two as well.
I can, but I think someone has a question. They were raising their hand and I think they were waiting to be called on. She dropped it after, but when we had a minute to break, if they want to shout out and ask a question.
That was actually the question I was going to ask, because you mentioned you were in civil and then you switched over to Triple E. So I was kind of curious as to why, other than you mentioning how it's more flexible as far as schedule goes, because I'm also interested in civil, but I also have a liking towards the environment. So I'm just kind of, again, trying to decide between those two things at this very moment.
Yeah. So my best friend's also in civil. So I at least see a little bit of her side too of civil. So again, for the main draw for me, it was that I had a lot more flexibility, because in the civil engineering requirement, you have to take, I think it's 4 breadth electives, and then 2 of them you have to go 2 or 3 classes up through. But that means that you still have to take a class in 4 different civil engineering pathways. and then pursue two of them a little bit farther, even if they're not necessarily quite your interest, but it is something so that you're getting the full like civil engineering breadth, because there's a lot of different pathways with civil engineering, and there's a lot that they cover. So it's just different required coursework. I know that Dr. Nyes can probably highlight more that I'm missing, but a lot of, I think that the biggest difference is looking at what coursework you would have to take as a civil engineer. And if you have a number of those things that you're really interested in doing, like transportation, architectural engineering, structural engineering, looking at materials, and doing a structures class and some of those sides of things, rather than Triple E, where it's a lot more, I guess, systems based, and you're looking at more the chemical side, I think is a way to say it. And you're looking at the models of what's going on in water and air and the soil and everything else. So I think in a previous session that we did, someone described it as like the civil would be creating that wastewater plant, and then we would be designing what's kind of going in and helping like work through the like chemical reactions inside of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up, Audrey, and again, encourage you to look at the plans of study and just think broadly, like in your heart, in your soul, do you know you want to be an environmental engineer, or would you like to be more broadly a civil engineer? Because civil engineering is broader, that spans more things than just the environment, you know, infrastructure systems and so on. And you know, and think about it that way. Look at the plan of study and just make the choice that's right for you.
And I think we only have a couple more minutes. So I do want to have Kendall and Siddhant talk just briefly about your senior design projects, if you guys don't mind.
I can go first. My senior design project, I actually really like. It's kind of not super traditional, like environmental engineering. What we're doing is we're creating an inventory of all of the greenhouse gases emitted from transportation on Purdue's campus. So our client is Aaron Madrid, who's in the Purdue Alternative Transport department. And basically we've looked at emissions from city bus and emissions from people's personal vehicles, so like within the parking permits, and then emissions from actual university vehicles. And we're collecting all of that and calculating how much it is, which is a fun undertaking. And then our final report will have recommendations with how to reduce the emissions from each different kind of sector. But I think it's been a really fun senior design project, just because I feel like we're actually pulling from all of our different classes. I know I was using GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems, which is a class I'm taking, and then I was using it in my senior design project, and I was running a macro on Excel, which is something we do in 300. So it's been really cool to see that. And my not concentration, because we don't really concentrate, but most of my selectives I've taken have been in classic environmental engineering, and to have my senior design project be in kind of the sustainability side was really nice to see both sides of that. And having the year-long senior design has also been really nice, because it's made it much less stressful experience than friends of mine who are in different disciplines and they do the one semester senior design. I know Dr. Nyes works very hard to make sure that our senior design is not a stressful experience. So I really enjoyed my project.
My senior design project's a little more traditional. We're working with Westler Engineering. That's a civil and environmental engineering firm in Indianapolis, to redesign the expanded wastewater treatment plant for Richmond, Indiana. This senior design project is actually quite different from what within what I've studied. Most of my classes have been more towards the sustainability side of EEE, but this project's being about more traditional wastewater side, and it's actually quite interesting. This is something I had not imagined myself doing, and I've actually found to really like. Also, the fact that it's a year long makes it a lot less stressful when it comes to classes, because last semester I had projects in all of my classes, and since this was year long, I could rely on my teammates a little better. So that makes it easier to, yeah.
Well, we don't have anything more in the chat. Tammy, are we ready for the QR code? Are we supposed to do that at 7:50?
Yes, so I'm gonna stop sharing and hopefully Andrew's still with us.
I am here. I will go ahead and post the QR code or share the QR code. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, if this is your first UIM event, if you have an iPhone, you should be able to just scan it. Otherwise, if you have anything else, you probably need to go in the App Store and download a QR code scanner. Otherwise, you can just leave your name and Purdue email in the chat, and then you can record your attendance that way too, if the QR code doesn't work for you. And then if there's nothing else, students are free to go.
We'll stick around for a few more minutes. So if any of you do have questions, you can go ahead and stick those in the chat as well. Thanks for attending. Appreciate the questions we got, and hopefully you learned a lot about EEE tonight.
Thank you very much.
So I just tried taking a photo of the QR code because I heard you can just do that, and it automatically took me to the login page with my iPhone. Didn't even try to use the QR code scanner, which I have, but I haven't used it in like 3 years.
And now when you go to restaurants and you have to scan or take a picture of the QR code for the menu. So that's actually very nice.